says that what the market demand curve really, what it's just about, it's nothing but, a curve that shows the various quantities that are demanded at various prices. So let us assume that the price is 10 initially. Okay, we assume that the price is 10. Let's assume that there we have a 10, and at that particular price someone is demanding, let's say, 5 units of this particular good. When the price is 10, someone is demanding 5 units of this particular good. When the price reduces from 10 to, let's say, 5, okay, to, let's say, 5, this person is able to demand, let's say, maybe 8 units of this particular good. Then the price reduces from 5 to, let's say, 2, and then this person demands, let's say, maybe 10, okay, 10 units of this particular good. Okay, so what the market demand curve does really is just, giving us a snapshot of how much is demanded at various prices, of course. Okay, yeah, of how much is demanded at various prices. Okay, so what we have done is just connecting these points. So we had the point there, we had another point there, and then we had another point there. So what we have come up with is a market demand curve. It's just showing us how many quantities are demanded at each price. So when the price is 10, we have 5 units. When the price is 5, we have 8 units. When the price is 2, we have 10 units. When you connect these dots, then we come up with what we call a market demand curve. Alright, so really that is what a market demand curve is all about. So we are talking about demand, of course, and we have said that this demand depends on price. Okay, so we look at the price. If the price is 10, how much is demanded? If the price is 5, how much is demanded? If the price is 2, how much is demanded? So one thing then, we must then notice one thing, and that is that the fact that the demand curve is downward sloping. Okay, so the demand curve is downward sloping. So the question is why? What's behind the slope of the demand curve? So the demand curve is downward sloping because of what we call the law of demand. Okay, so there's this thing called the law of demand. So the law of demand basically states that given any market setup, there is a negative relationship that exists between price and demand. There's a negative relationship that exists between price and demand. So this negative relationship comes about because of the fact that when the price is on the higher side, we expect demand to be on the lower side. When price is on the lower side, we expect demand to be on the higher side. So going back to our graph, which is this one here, we have seen that when the price is 10 kwacha, okay, this individual, this consumer, only demands 5 units of this particular commodity. But when the price reduces from 10 to 5, this guy has increased the number of units that he's demanding. Okay? Initially, he was only able to purchase, he was only able to purchase 5 units. But now that the price has reduced from 10 to 5, he has increased the number of units from 5 to 8. Again, when the price further reduces from 5 to 2, this consumer has increased his consumption from 8 to 10. So what we are seeing is that as the price is reducing, the quantity that is demanded is actually increasing, meaning that there is a negative relationship between price and quantity, and that is what we call the law of demand. So the reason why the reason why the demand curve is downward sloping is because of the fact that there is a negative relationship between price and quantity. If price of sugar is increasing, you are obviously going to reduce on the quantity of sugar that you are buying. But if the opposite happens, if the price of sugar is actually reducing, you are going to increase the units of sugar that you are purchasing. Why? Because we as economists, we assume that consumers are rational. Consumers are rational. They want to maximize utility from their money. They want to maximize satisfaction from their money. So how then are they going to maximize their satisfaction? It's by following the law of demand. Okay? It's by following the law of demand. If the price increases, if the price increases, then the quantity must reduce. If the price reduces, then the quantity must increase. So we as consumers, every consumer, whether they have gone to school or not, believe you me, whether they have gone to school or not, as long as you're a consumer, whether like it or not, you're going to follow the law of demand. Even someone who has never gone to school, the moment they know that the price for sugar has gone up, they are going to reduce their demand. Even in the villages, they know that when the price is on the higher side, I have to reduce on the quantity. If the price has reduced, but cheaper, they're even going to increase the quantity. So that is the law of demand. So the law of demand states that there's a negative relationship between price and the quantity demanded. And now, from this, we let me just admit someone.
Hello. Yes, so are you saying that these guys in business, they use the law of demand on promotions to bring promotions?
Okay, so with promotions, the last time we talked about opportunity cost. So what they do is they'll first assess, okay, they'll first make an assessment. They'll carry out what we call an elasticity analysis. Okay? What elasticity is just looking at, okay, if I increase the price by this amount, what will be the impact on the quantity? So if you're selling something, the analysis will basically be on, if I increase the price by this margin, by how much will my sales increase? So if they notice that their product, the elasticity of their product is quite on the lower side, such that even if they increase the price by this little margin, or if they increase the price by, let's say, 50%, their sales won't be affected. Then they can play around with price. Okay? Then they can play around with price. So basically with advertising, the aim is just to change consumer tastes. Yeah? They will change consumer tastes so that taste can be more like tilted toward that particular good. So let us assume that you and I are in the same market structure, which is oligopolistic market structure, where we can advertise. You have assessed, you have done your elasticity analysis, and you have come to a conclusion that, well, if we do our adverts, okay, if we do advertising, then we're going to capture a larger market share. Okay, then of course you go ahead with that. We go that route. And then there is me, who has not done any elasticity analysis. I've not done any advertising. And then, so of course, we are trying to share the market. So it's obvious that for you who has engaged someone who is doing advertising for you, it's obvious that for you, you're going to capture a larger market share. Okay, because for you have more like changed consumer taste toward your good. So of course, as you are doing that, you're going to increase your demand. Okay, of course you're going to increase your demand. So what they do is before actually for them to carry out their promotions and all that, they'll first carry out an analysis for them to understand for them to understand the degree of the response of the market. If they were to engage in that promotion, what will be the impact? If the impact is positive, that is, if the benefits will be on the positive side compared to the cost side, they'll go ahead with the promotion. But if they discover that even if we do this, elasticity is quite stiff, quite sticky, we're not going to increase the sales, then of course they are going to quit that particular. They won't go ahead with promotion. So yes, for them to carry out their promotions, they first have to look at demand. Actually, they have to look at both demand and also the supply side. So yes, they consider such things before they engage in promotions. Have I answered the question?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question? Any other question? All right, it's quiet. I believe that we are together.
It's just on the same statement you mentioned, to say the law of demand states that there is a negative relationship between price. Is it between price and quantity?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to. Yeah, whereby let's say price is high, then if the price is high, quantity will be low, and if quantity is high, the price will be low.
Yes.
Is that what it means?
Yes, that is what it means.
Okay, I just needed a clarification.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, yes. So that is about the law of demand. That is about the law of demand. So, you know how they phrase these questions? They'll just ask you to explain the law of demand. Yeah, just like that. Explain the law of demand. So, in explanation, in economics, if possible, every graph must be backed by a proper, well-thought explanation. So what you do is this: you state what the law is, okay, and then you illustrate using a graph. Okay, you illustrate using a graph that the law of demand states that there's a negative relationship between price and quantity. Okay, this can be as illustrated below. So then you put up you do the graph. You do the graph like this one, and then you show that, okay, for instance, if the price is at if the price is P1, the quantity that is demanded is Q1. When the price reduces from P1 to, let's say, P2 or P prime, then the quantity demanded is Q2. When the price further reduces from P prime to P prime prime, then the quantity demanded is this much. Then connecting these dots, we come up with this particular graph, which is downward sloping. So it is downward sloping because it's following the law of demand. Then you're going to earn your marks. Okay, so when they say state the law of explain the law of demand, then you just do a one sentence and all that. Yeah, of course you'll be given marks, but you're not going to earn 4 marks. So in economics, really, if you want to illustrate something using a graph, you do the graph, you put up an explanation. All right, now that we have come to an understanding of what demand is, then we are safe to look at the determinants of demand. What determines demand? Okay, but before that, we should first understand the 4 types of goods that exist in a given market. So there's what we call a normal good, or there are what we call normal goods. There are what we call inferior goods. There are what we call perfect substitutes goods. There are what we call perfect complement goods. Okay, if you want to go into the deep side of it, There are what we call vibrant goods. There are also what we call, what's the fifth one? It's a vibrant good, and okay, I pray that I remember the other one. All right. So what is a normal good? A normal good is a good. So if you're writing, you can write. A normal good is a good whose demand increases with an increase in income. A normal good is a good whose demand increases with an increase in income. Okay? That's a normal good. So, here's the situation. If we take an example of what? Meat, beef. Okay? If we take an example of beef, if we make an assumption that beef is a normal good, what will happen is that if I am a consumer of beef and initially, let's say my income was 500 kwacha per month, okay, 500 kwacha per month, I will be able to, let's say, to buy, let's say, 2 kgs of beef, okay. But if my income is increased from 500 kwacha, let's say, to 3,000 kwacha, if for real beef is a normal good, I'm expected to increase my consumption of beef, because I mean my income has increased. I'm now a boss. I'm earning a 3,000. Earlier on, I was earning a 5,000. Okay, so now that my income has increased, I'm expected to increase the consumption of beef. Why? Because beef is a normal good. The demand for this particular good, in this case beef, must increase with an increase in my income. I must consume more. More units must be demanded. Why? Because beef is a normal good. Now, the direct opposite of a normal good is an inferior good. An inferior good is a good whose demand reduces with an increase in income. Okay? In uni, in UNZA, we usually take soya chunks as an inferior good. Okay? Soya chunks, we have monk sauce, cheese carpenter, those are inferior goods. Before BC, we'll get these goods. We'll get carpenter, we'll get soya chunks because we don't have money. The moment BC hits our account, we switch. Okay? We forget about carpenter. We now start talking about Hungry Lion. We invade East Park, Hungry Lion, pizza, and all that. Why? Because earlier on I was dealing with an inferior good. So an inferior good is a good whose demand reduces with an increase in income. The moment your income increases, you stop. Actually, you reduce. If you reduce, if not a complete stoppage, you reduce the consumption of this particular good. Okay? So a direct opposite of a normal good is an inferior good. So a normal good is a good whose demand increases with an increase in income. But an inferior good is a good whose demand reduces with an increase in income. Or put differently, an inferior good is a good whose demand increases with a reduction in income. As you become poor and poor, then you increase the demand of soya chunk because that is what you can afford. Okay? But when your income is increasing, why should I go for soya chunks when I can go for pizza? Or why should I go for soya chunks when I can go for Hungry Lion? Okay? So that's an inferior good. But with a normal good, there's just that positive relationship. We increase your income, you're going to increase the consumption. But with an inferior good, there's a negative relationship. We increase your income, you reduce the consumption. We reduce your income, you increase the consumption. Alright. And then the other type of good is what we call perfect substitutes. So these are goods that can be substituted one for the other. Okay? You can easily substitute one for the other. You can easily substitute this for the other. For instance, let's say, assuming that Techno and Infinix are perfect substitutes. Okay? You can easily go for this one and not this one. When the price of this one increases, you just forget about it, you go for the other one. You can perfectly substitute them. Those are perfect substitutes. And then we have complements. These are goods that go hand in hand. They move in tandem. Left shoe, right shoe. You cannot wear pata pata this side, then you have Air Force the other side. People think you are, yeah. So those are complements. They must go hand in hand. They must go together. If it's Air Force, they should be the right side. They should be the left side. If it's pata pata, they should be the right side, the left side. So those are complements. They move together. All right. So now that we have an understanding of these types of goods, let's go back to the determinants of demand. So the first determinant is income. Okay, the first determinant of demand is income. So the question is, how does income affect demand, or how does income determine demand? So the impact of income on demand depends on the nature of the good you're dealing with. Are you dealing with a normal good or an inferior good? Okay, because if you are dealing with a normal good, then assuming that there's an increase in income, automatically there should be an increase in demand for this particular good. If you are dealing with an inferior good, we increase your income, automatically there should be a reduction in demand for this particular good. So where every time you are asked to explain how income affects demand, please, you must explain that the impact of income on demand depends on the nature of the good you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a normal good, assuming that there's an increase in income, then there is going to be an increase in demand for that particular good. If you're dealing with an inferior good, an increase in income will have a negative impact on demand. Okay, so that is how you are supposed to do your explanation. That is how you are supposed to do explanation. So that is how income determine, or that is how income affect demand. It depends with the nature of the good you are dealing with. If you are dealing with a normal good, there's just that positive relationship. You increase income, you increase demand for this particular good. You reduce income, you are also going to reduce demand. But if you're dealing with an inferior good, then there's that negative type of relationship. You increase my income, why should I go for an inferior good? Okay, so you increase my income, I reduce the demand for that particular good. Well, you reduce my income, you demote me, I'll have no money to afford those nice goods. Then I'll increase the demand for an inferior good. All right. So that is how income affects demand. So with what I've explained, do we have questions? Please feel free.
So far, you are really flowing well, sir. Me, I'm really enjoying. I don't know about my colleagues. You are really flowing well.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I believe that's the case with everyone else. Yeah. All right. The next thing is price of related goods. Price of related goods. All right. So I have explained that we have substitutes, and we also have complements. So every time you are asked about how prices of related goods determine demand, in your explanation, do not forget substitutes and complements. Okay, I'll explain why. So with prices of related goods, let us start with substitutes. We've said that substitutes are goods that can be easily substituted one for the other. Here's the situation. You have Techno, you have Ethinix. You go to, let's say, you go to a shop, okay? You go to a shop that sells mobile phones. When you were coming from home, you had a plan to get an Infinix phone. You go to the shop, you find that actually the price that you thought would be the price is not the price. Okay, you thought that this phone is going at 1.5. You go there and find that the phone is actually going at 3,000. What do? You easily substitute that for the other. You go for Techno. Yeah. So those are perfect substitutes. You can easily substitute this for the other. In given a situation where this particular good it's not available, you can easily find a substitute. So those are substitutes. So now what happens with substitutes? An increase in the price of good X, okay, an increase in the price of good X, given a situation that good X has got a perfect substitute, and then you increase the price of good X, that will have a negative impact on the demand of good X, but it will have a positive impact on the demand of its substitute. Why? If there's an increase in the price of good X, let's go back to the law of demand. There's an increase in the price of good X. The law of demand states that whenever there's an increase in the price of this particular good, I must reduce its consumption. And check, there is a perfect substitute somewhere. So what you do is, you just reduce the consumption of this good whose price has gone up and increase the price of the other good, of its substitute. So, whenever you are dealing with substitutes, when there's an increase in the price of one good, you reduce the consumption, you reduce the demand for that particular good whose price has gone up, and increase the demand for its substitute. Okay? So that is how, price of related goods in terms of substitutes affect the demand. So the impact on demand in this case would depend on the type of good you're dealing with. Are you dealing with perfect substitutes or with complements? So with substitutes, that is how an increase in the price of one good will affect demand. So if there's an increase in the price of sugar, assuming that sugar has got a perfect substitute, which one? Let's say sugar and I don't know what we can find as a substitute for sugar. Sugar and sweetened. Yeah, sugar and sweetened. There's an increase in the price for sugar. If you don't mind, you can go for sweetened. Whatever it is called. Or an example, brown sugar and white sugar. You can easily substitute these two. Okay? You go to ShopRite to find that the price of white sugar has gone up. You go for brown sugar. If you go there, you find that the price for brown sugar has gone up, you go for the other one. So you can easily substitute these two goods. So that is how prices, in this case, affect demand. Let's go to complements. Complements are goods that move together. Okay, they go together. Left leg shoe, right leg shoe. You cannot go to Young Furons and say, for me, I'm just going to buy the left side. I won't get the right side. Okay, so let's make an assumption that for you to write, you need a paper. Okay, let's make an assumption that for you to write using a pen, you need a paper. And then let's make this fun assumption that you cannot write whatsoever minus having a paper. So you go to a shop, you find that the price of pens has gone up. If for real these two goods are perfect complements, okay? Let me just admit someone, sorry. Yeah, so if you find that the price of pens has gone up, okay, if you find that the price of pens has gone up, what do you do? So if you are dealing with perfect complements, you cannot just reduce on the quantity of pens you are buying. You should also reduce on the quantity of paper that you are buying. Why? Because if you just reduce the quantity of pens, then you say, I'm going to buy more paper. The question is, if these two goods are perfect complements for you, then that extra paper will have no use. So that is how perfect complements affect demand. So with perfect complements, an increase in the price of good X will reduce the demand for both goods. Okay? A reduction in the price of good X will increase the demand for both goods. Why? Because these goods move in tandem. You cannot increase the demand for one and reduce the demand for the other. They move together. You cannot have one, you cannot have more of one and less of the other. They move together. So this is what most market players do. They play around with consumers. They know that if, for instance, which ones are perfect complements? Like perfect complements, you cannot have this minus the other. Let's say, which one? Which one? Perfect complements. Let's say, I want to give a practical example and show you how they play with our minds, especially these chain stores. They know that, well, if they really know that these two goods are perfect complements, what they'll do is they will lie. They will lie that, you know what? They know anyway that consumers behave in this manner. If we just say, okay, let us reduce the price of just this good by a small margin, we know that if these people are going to increase the demand for this particular good, they are also going to increase the demand for that other good, because they're not going to use this good minus that good. So now what they do? They're just going to say, okay, there's a promotion in ShopRite. They have reduced the price of this good by this margin, and then they'll be bulk buying. You are increasing the demand for this good, but you're not only increasing the demand for this good, it's automatic that the moment you increase the demand for this good, you should also increase the demand for the other good, because you cannot use this good in the absence of the other. So that is the impact of what's this, of prices of related goods in terms of complements on demand. So now, you as a manager, you are supposed to know. Okay, you are supposed to know the types of goods you are selling. Okay, you are supposed to know, okay, does this good has a perfect substitute somewhere? If yes, how then should I manipulate the price so that I increase my sales? Are these goods perfect complements? If yes, how best can I manipulate the price so that I increase the sales? If you know that the goods are perfect complements, you know that what I can do is just reduce the price on this one, or on this good. I reduce the price, let's say, by just a 5%, and then I increase the price of its complement by, let's say, even double. You reduce here by 5%, increase the price that side by 10%, which means the 5% decrease here has been covered in the other good. And this is what they do. That's how they play with our minds. They know that this is the nature of consumers. They are going to follow this. Okay, so that is how complements will affect demand. How about advertising? Advertising and consumer tastes. How does this affect, or how does this determine demand? So, the reason why firms engage in advertising is just to change your thinking, twist your taste towards that particular commodity that they are promoting. That's the whole purpose. So you as a manager, you are supposed to know that, okay, if I increase the intensity of advertising, how is it going to affect my demand? Is it going to increase demand, thereby increasing your sales, or it's just going to reduce your demand and also reduce on the sales? So with advertising, there is usually a positive relationship, unless otherwise. Okay, unless if you use the wrong method of advertising. There are times when you as a manager, you think that if I use this. Now there is this common way of doing adverts in Zambia, where most firms prefer using celebrities. Okay, so they'll put this nice post with a celebrity there, and then people be like, I know this guy. If he's using this drink, let me go for it. Okay. So what are they doing? They're just playing with our minds, changing our taste so that we can increase the demand. But of course, this can go the opposite side, where they choose a wrong celebrity, someone who is not loved by the general public. Then people just say, this one, no, not this one. So you as a manager, you are supposed to know the proper advertising strategy to use, because if you use it, if you use the wrong method, you might end up decreasing your sales and thereby affecting your profit margin. So with advertising, what we are agreeing is that if you increase your advertising, of course, you do more promotions. The aim is to change consumer tastes. You change consumer tastes, so that the aim is just to make consumers think that this good is better than the other, even when that good is inferior anyway. You change their thinking that this good is better than the other, so that they can increase the demand for that particular good. Okay. How about population? How does population affect demand? Well, here's the situation. Assuming that we have this hypothetical country called Zambia, and in this country called Zambia, there are only 1 million people. Land is abundant. There is no demand for land because it's now abundant. Land is not scarce. Everybody has got their land and all that. And then from nowhere, boom, the population increases from 1 million to 18.5 million. And now there is demand for land. Everybody's talking about land. Land has now become gold. So with population, with an increase in population, we expect demand to also increase. Okay, so there's with population, unless otherwise, but with population, there's just that positive relationship. You increase population, you should also expect an increase in demand. Why? Because more people come. The more people come, everybody's coming with a mouth. That mouth needs to feed, so there's just that increase in demand. Okay, so the higher the population, we expect the demand also to be on the higher side. How about consumer expectations? If you and I expect that tomorrow ERB is going to increase or is going to adjust the fuel pump prices, what are we going to do? Everybody is going to line up at the gas stations, trying to get gas at that cheaper price before there's an increase in the price. So actually, in economics, expectations play a very critical role when it comes to determining demand. Why? Because when consumers expect that there will be something in the near future that is going to affect their purchasing power, there is always an impact on demand. So if consumers expect that there will be an increase in the price of that particular good which they value, there will always be an increase in demand. There will always be an increase in demand. Okay, we expect for sure that tomorrow prices for fuel, the fuel pump price is going to increase, let's say by 2 quarter. Just that margin of 2 quarter, you're going to see cars lining up. So that means that there's been an increase in demand. Why? Because of consumer expectations. Consumers expect the price to be increased. All right, so these are some of the determinants of demand. So in case you are asked, I'm pretty much sure that you'll be able to explain how income affects demand, how prices of related goods affect demand, how advertising, promotions, how those affect demand, how population affect demand, and how consumer expectations will have an impact on demand. Are there questions? Let me pause for now and get feedback. Are there questions? Or maybe I'm kicked out. Madam Ruth, are you still able to get me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. I assume that's the case with everyone. Let me just confirm if this thing is still recording. Okay, we are good. Alright, so those are the determinants of demand. Now, yesterday I said that we cannot run away from mathematics, especially with economics courses. Okay, so we just have to play around with numbers. So this then brings us to the concept of demand functions. So there are different demand functions. There are linear demand functions, there are quadratic demand functions, there are cubic demand functions. But generally, with this particular course, unless otherwise, we'll be dealing with linear demand functions. We'll be dealing with linear demand functions. So we'll be dealing with linear demand functions. So what is a demand function? A demand function is just a general equation that represents a demand curve. Okay, so this thing called demand function is derived from the determinants of demand. It's derived from the determinants of demand. So what this demand function here shows is that the quantity demanded of good X, okay, so the QXD means the quantity demanded of good X. So the quantity, the Q is for the quantity, the D is demanded, and then the X is representing a particular commodity. So the quantity demanded of good X is a function of, so now we have these variables here that determines the quantity demanded of this particular good. Okay, so this is what we call a demand function. So in this case, we are saying that the quantity demanded of good X is a function of, or we are saying that the quantity demanded of good X is dependent on, or we can say that the quantity demanded of good X is determined by. Okay, so the quantity demanded of good X is a function of price of good X. Okay, so the quantity demanded of this good called good X is determined by its own price, that is the price of good X, which is its own price, the price of good Y, where good Y is a related good. Okay, it's also determined by the level of income M. Okay, it's also determined by any other variable that might affect its demand. So what a demand function really does is just simplifying things. Okay, instead of us saying that, well, instead of writing that, well, the demand for Coca-Cola depends on the price of Coca-Cola, it also depends on the price of Coke, no, it also depends on the price of Fanta, it also depends on the income that an individual is having, and it also depends on any other variable that might affect demand. That statement is too long and cumbersome. What we do is we just simplify that using a demand function. Okay, so quantity demanded of good X is a function of Px, Py, M, and H, where H is any other variable that might affect our demand. So now let me break down this. So I've said that the QXD just shows, or it represents, the quantity demanded of good X. Okay, and then the F just shows that it's the function of, okay, or it's determined by. Okay, so the F is the function. It means it's a function of something. This Px is the price of this particular commodity, and in this case the X is the price of good X. So the X is the price of good X. The Py is the price of any related good. Okay, so it depends now with the nature of the good. Are we dealing with substitutes or complements? Okay, and then the M is the level of income. How much income does this consumer have? Okay, and then the H is any other variable that might affect the demand for this particular good. So this is a demand function. So that is a demand function. All right. Cool. So with that being said, we are safe to talk about what we call inverse demand function. So we have defined the demand function both from the theoretical point of view, anyway, still theory, both from the notes point of view and also from the mathematical point of view. Okay. Now, yesterday I talked about optimal. I was talking about, for you to maximize your profits, you're supposed to produce at an optimal level of output. Yeah. For you to maximize your sales, you're supposed to have an optimal amount of. You have to know the optimal amount of, how much to sell. For you to do any optimization problem anyway, you are supposed to. So in this case, since we're dealing with quantities, for you to know the optimal amount of output to produce, you're supposed to play around with an inverse demand function. For you to know how many units of goods to buy, in this case, since you're dealing with demand, for you to know how many units of pens to buy, you're supposed to play around with the inverse demand function. Okay, so an inverse demand function is nothing but a function where price is made a function of quantity demanded. That is an inverse demand function. Of course, they can't ask you for a definition, but you're just supposed to know. Okay, so an inverse demand function is a function, just a general function, where price is made a function of quantity demanded. So here's the difference. The difference between a normal demand function and an inverse demand function. With a normal demand function, it will look like this, where quantity is a function of something. But with an inverse demand function, it will look like that, where price is the subject of the formula. Here, with a normal demand function, quantity is the subject of the formula. But with an inverse demand function, price is the subject of the formula. So that's the difference between the two. So the reason why we struggle to find the inverse demand function is that this inverse demand function is the one that is going to help us to find total revenue. For instance, we're going to use the inverse demand function. For us to find the optimal level of output, we'll be forced somehow to use the inverse demand function. For us to know the optimal price to charge, we'll be forced to use the inverse demand function. So that is the reason why we struggle, we play around with numbers, we play around with mathematics until we get the inverse demand function. Alright. Are we together? Let me just get some feedback. Are we together this far?
Yes, sir.
Alright, thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, only that I'm writing.
Oh, you are writing.
Yes, I'm writing, so I missed something on the demand function. I missed some lines, maybe the two last lines, something.
Okay, read your statement. Your statement will help me know where you are behind. What have you written, or where you lost exactly?
Okay, I wrote something that PY equals price of a related good Y, that is under the demand function. Then under the inverse demand function, I've written something at least.
Okay.
Yeah, now when you got when you this one, so I did not write the substitute good. Substitute good, because substitute good, complementary good. M is for income. Those are the things I didn't write.
Okay, you can write.
Then normal good. Okay, I'm writing already.
Okay.
Then this one is inferior goods.
Yes.
Okay. Then H, any other variable. Okay. So I think I'm okay now.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So alternatively, you can be taking screenshots. Yeah, alternatively. That's what the other guys do. But there's also an assumption that when you're writing, there's just that level of understanding that you achieve. Yeah. Yeah, I used to feel like that when the lecturer is lecturing. When I write something, I won't forget. So yeah, it depends with whichever side you follow. All right. So yeah, I was talking about the investment function. That basically with an investment function, this is a function where price is made a function of quantity, and with the normal demand function, that is a function where quantity is made quantity is made as a function of price. So they're just two opposites. Yeah. Okay. Now I will not assume that all of us here are okay with algebra. Yeah? I will not make that assumption. So what I'll do is I'll derive, or I'll show you how this inverse demand function was derived. Okay, cool. So our demand function is this one. Quantity demanded of good X is equal to 10 less 2px. So what I'll do is I'll try to use the same board we have used last time, and try to jot something. I'll be slow, of course, because I'm not using a touch screen. I wish I had a touch screen. Okay, confirm if you're able to see this. Just confirm. Someone to confirm, please.
We can see.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we have that function. Quantity demanded of good X is equal to, is that a 10 less 2px? Let me just confirm. Yeah, is equal to 10. This technology was 10 less 2px. Yeah, and by now we understand that this is just our normal demand function, and now we want to get an inverse demand function. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I know there are times when they'll give you a demand function, yeah, and then question A, get the or find the inverse demand function. Then question B, find the, let's say, find the optimal amount of goods that can be sold. Question C, you find the profit. Question D, based on the answer you found on question C, is this film, is it okay for this manager to continue selling or not? So that's the funny part about economics. If you get question 1 wrong, chances are so high that you might get question B wrong as well. Anyways, yeah. Alright, so how do we get an inverse demand function? Okay, so let's go back to basic laws of mathematics. For you to get px, the subject of the formula, okay, we have to know, negative, positive, those things. So the only rule that we are going to apply here is that of transposing. We know that if, for instance, if I get this 10, if I transpose it to the other side, that is, if I make this 10 jump the equal sign, if this 10 here is positive, the moment it crosses the equal sign, it should become the opposite sign, right? So if here it's positive, when it crosses the equal sign, it should become negative. If this negative 2px, here it's negative. If I try to force this guy to cross the equal sign, then it must give up this sign and get an opposite sign. Meaning that since here it's negative, if it's going to cross the equal sign, it should become positive. So those are the basic laws that we're going to apply here. Okay? So what we want is to make px the price, the subject of the formula, because that is when we're going to get an inverse demand function. Okay? So how are we going to do that? Simple. First thing first, let us get this guy, the one we want to make the subject of the formula. We get this whole guy, the negative 2px, we transpose him. We transpose this guy, we take this guy the other side. So when we transpose this guy, when we take the negative 2px to the other side, it will become positive 2px. right? So meaning that I can now safely and comfortably write my positive 2px, okay, as a positive number. So this 2px is transposed the negative 2px. I've transposed the negative 2px. Then that is going to equal, the next thing is I maintain the 10 the way it is. Okay, let the 10 be on the on the right hand side. So I put my 10 there, 10. Then what am I going to do with the positive qx? So I'll do what I've done with the negative 2px. I'll transpose this guy. I'll make him cross the equal sign. So since this guy, before anything else, is positive, when I transpose him, he should surrender his sign and get another sign. So here it's positive. When it crosses the equal sign, it should now become negative. So it will become negative q, sorry about that, negative qx. Okay, something like that. The next thing is, remember that I've defined an inverse demand function as a function where price is made as a function of quantity, meaning that I have to make price the subject of the formula. Okay, I have to make price the subject of the formula. How can I do that? Given that I've reached this stage, the next stage is just to divide throughout by 2. So here I'll divide by 2. I'll do the same here. I'll divide by 2. And finally, I'll also divide negative qx by 2. Okay? Next step is, well, here on the left hand side, on top I have 2px, below I have a 2. So this 2 and that 2 can go. So I'll cancel that 2. I'll also cancel this 2. Meaning that on the left hand side, I'm only left with the px. Okay, so px is equal to 2 into 10, 5 times. So I have my 5 here. Okay, I maintain my negative sign, minus, just a second, my Wi-Fi is losing power, so I have to connect it to power. Let me get feedback. Are we together?
Yes, we are together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, what have I done? Alright. The next thing is, now I'm dealing with, so this part, the qx over 2 can be simplified. Okay, the qx over 2 can be simplified. This is the same thing as saying 1 over 2 multiplied by qx. Okay, multiplied by qx. This is the same thing as qx over 2. Why? If I multiply 1 over 2 by qx, I'll still get qx over 2. Okay, so therefore the qx over 2, if I divide 2 into 1, I'll get a 0.5, right? Meaning that this part, the qx over 2, is the same thing as saying 0.5, so 0.5 qx. Okay, which means that I have derived my inverse demand function. So this inverse demand function is the same function that is showing here. Px is equal to 5 less 0.5 qx. So which means that I have derived my inverse demand function. So basically, generally, that is how we derive an inverse demand function. So it doesn't really matter the nature of the demand function that you've been given. There are times when they'll try to manipulate things a bit. Yeah, they'll give you, let's say, not a quadratic function, but maybe they'll give you something like let's imagine it was something like quantity demanded of good X is equal to, instead of putting a 10 here, let's say they've just put a fraction, just to play with our minds. They put a fraction. Let's say they say 3 over 4. So QXD is equal to 3 over 4 minus, instead of putting, let's say, 2px, let's say they just put another fraction, half of the price of X. Then question A, find the inverse demand function. You just do the same thing. Moreover, I believe with this course you have to use a calculator, unless otherwise. Yeah, so there's no much complication. Just punch your numbers, you get your answer. But what to do is what we have done, what I've shown you. It's the same thing. Right. Are we together on deriving the inverse demand function? I just need your feedback. Just unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, we're together.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, I'll ask for a favor from us here. Remember that I sent the link a bit late, because we agreed that the session was supposed to start at 20, but I sent the link at 20:06. So I'm asking for your even just 10 minutes so that I can finish what I wanted to do today. Please. Okay? It's 9:30, I know, but I'm asking if you could instead end at or stop at 9:40. I believe that's okay, right?
It's okay. With me, it is okay with me.
Okay. Well, since I have one, I suppose that's the case. At least that's what we do at our church. Anyone seconding, when one person raises their hand, it's okay, it's carried. Alright, so yeah, so that is that. Now, I wanted us to, anyway, my aim is that we at least reach even just here, fine. At least, it's okay. So now, let's talk about the change in quantity demanded. So, first thing first, if you're writing, please write this. There's a difference between quantity demanded, there's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. Okay? So if you're writing, please write that. There's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. Those are two different things. So there's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. Alright? If you have written that, then write the following statement. A change in quantity demanded involves a movement along a given demand curve. A change in quantity demanded involve a movement along a given demand curve. Okay, that's the second statement. The third statement is a change in demand. Okay, a change in demand involves a total shift of the demand curve. I'll explain the difference, but for now, let's write that. So the first statement was, if my memory serves me well, there's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. The second statement is a change in quantity demanded involves a movement along a given demand curve. The third statement is a change in demand involves a total shift of the demand curve. Yeah? Cool. Now, when we say quantity demanded, I'm talking about, or when someone is talking about quantity demanded, they're basically talking about how much, how much of this how many units anyway? Yeah, let me say that. How many units of this good are you demanding at a given price? Okay? At a given price. That is the quantity demanded. At a given price, how many units of a given good are you demanding? When
Mr.
you're
Lungu,
talking
I didn't
about
catch the.
Mama.
Sorry, excuse me. I didn't catch the difference between the two. Just come again, please.
Okay. Okay. So the difference is that when you're talking about a change in quantity demanded, we're talking about a movement along the demand curve, yeah? And then when you're talking about a change in demand, we're talking about the total shift of the whole demand curve. So the difference really is that whenever you are talking about a change in quantity demanded, you are talking about a situation like this one. Okay. Initially, when the price was 10 kwacha, yeah? 10 kwacha, you are able to demand 4 units of this good. Okay? Now, assume that the price reduced from 10 to 6. Remember the law of demand? You are reducing the price, which means you should expect an increase in the quantity demanded, right? So, the quantity demanded has now increased from 4 to 7. So, that is a change in quantity demanded. You are moving along this demand curve. You are just moving along this demand curve as a result of a change in the price, of course. Okay? So as a result of a change in the price, you have witnessed this change in quantity demanded. Okay? You are moving along a given demand curve. That is a change in quantity demanded. So, you are just changing the quantity that you are demanding. Why? Because there is a change in the price somewhere. Okay? That is with quantity demanded. So, with quantity demanded, you are just moving along a given demand curve. Okay? Now, let's see how that differs from a change in demand. So, initially, we had this as our demand as our demand curve. We had this as our demand curve. Remember, I've said that with a change in demand, there is a total shift in the demand curve. Yeah, there's a total shift in the demand curve. So here's the situation where initially you had this as your demand curve, but now after a change in certain variables, your whole demand curve has shifted. The original one is the blue one, but now you have the red one. So in this case, there has been an upward change in demand. Okay, there has been an upward change in demand. The whole demand curve has shifted. So that is a change in demand. So a change in demand involves the shifting of the demand curve. But take note that this shift is not always an upward shift. There are times when it can take a negative shift, such that instead of it shifting upwards, it will shift downwards, depending on the nature of the cause. Okay, so that is with a change in demand. So a change in quantity demanded is always along a given demand curve. Okay, it's always along a given demand curve. But with a change in demand, we are talking about a situation where the whole demand curve is either going to shift upwards or downwards, depending on the nature of the cause. Okay? Is that clear? Is that okay? Should I repeat?
Yes, repeat.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So, I've said that there's a difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand. A change in quantity demanded involves a movement along a given demand curve. Okay? So in this case, we're talking about as a result of reduction in the price from 10 to 6, your quantity demanded for that particular good, yeah? Your quantity demanded has increased from 4 to 7. Therefore, you are moving along this demand curve. You're moving along this demand curve. So movement along, okay? Here's the rule of the thumb. Movement along is equal to quantity demanded. Shift is equal to a change in demand. Just that. Movement along is the change in quantity demanded. A shift of the demand curve is the change in demand. Okay? So every time, actually they usually bring these questions under multiple choice sometimes, yeah? Multiple choice. Which one of the following represents a change in quantity demanded? A, movement along the demand curve. B, movement towards the demand curve. You know, they like giving those funny things. Then you get confused. Okay? So the movement from A to B is an increase in quantity demanded, which is a change in quantity demanded. Okay? I'm only remaining with a minute to 9:40. So, but with a change in demand, we're talking about the total shift of the demand curve. The whole demand curve is shifting, either upwards or downwards. There are times when the demand curve is going to shift downwards. There are times when the demand curve is going to shift upwards. All right, so we are on slide number 8. We are moving at a slow but I believe good pace. Don't worry, the target is not to finish the slides. The target is, you understanding. Yeah, really, that's the target. Okay, so unless there are questions for today, we are going to call it an evening. But in case there are questions, please feel free, ask.
Good evening, Mr. Lungu.
Good evening, thank you, ma'am.
When can you take us through the assignment? Because it's due next week.
Okay. We can say today is it's due next week. Which means I saw a wrong date. Isn't it due on the? Is it 30th? Unless otherwise.
I thought it was 17th. Huh?
Was the date adjusted?
It's due on the 31st.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it's 17th.
Yes, that's what I know. That's what I know.
Okay, fine. Well, good. If it's due on the 31st, what I was thinking was, I should maybe more like try to speed up a bit, so that we try to cover as much as we can, so that even as we are going through the assignment, we are able to relate. You see that? Yeah, that was what I was thinking. But if you suggest that we go through the assignment, no problem. I can do the solutions, then share them, and then we go through. It's okay with me. Whatever you say, I'll do. But I thought that maybe we more like dedicate this week, so to say, we dedicate this week to, understanding the content, and then maybe next week we have a day where we're going to go through the assignment, so that at least you can be relating to what I'll be explaining. I don't know, which one do you think is fine?
I think your suggestion is better because at the end of the day, sir, during the final exam, we will be left alone. So it's important that you continue, you teach us first, then you can handle the assignment, let's say next week, since the due date is 31st. I think this is my opinion.
All right. I've noted your submission, sir. I've also noted the submission from Madam Chumuka. All right, so I believe we go with that, since the eyes have it. That's what we said, our change. All those in favor say aye. Yeah. All right, so if there are no further suggestions, then we can call it a night. Yeah. So what you do is, on your own, you try to go through what we've discussed. Yeah. That way it helps. It really helps. All right, then we continue tomorrow. Tomorrow is a Monday, I believe. So yeah, we have a session. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, on the same note, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, on the same note, tomorrow Monday, I'm just asking, is it okay if we start at 19? Why I'm asking, I don't want to be selfish, but I just want to be open enough.
Yes.
Or the reason I'm asking that we start at 19 is because I have an official assignment at 20:30. So I was thinking that if it is okay,